Welcome everyone to Best Choice Realty. I'm Rochelle Wilhite. I'm the designated broker. And tonight we're going to cover the commercial purchase and sale agreement, really go basics with all of you. As in the past, if you have questions or you have comments or you'd like to maybe clarify something, maybe I misspoke, be sure and just go ahead and put that in the chat or raise your hand or let me know that you need a question answered. So I move fairly swift. And I want to make sure I have enough time to cover the basics of the commercial purchase and sale. So I'm going to dive right in and certainly show you an example of a SIBA contract. So you can see an example of one that is filled out. The first thing I want to kind of draw your attention to is you think, oh, Best Choice Realty, we don't do commercial. Should we go with Kidder Matthews or some other companies? And the answer is you could. They specialize only in commercial, but at Best Choice Realty, we do commercial. We do about 5% commercial purchase and sale agreements, and we do about 95% residential currently, but that number is rising with more agents and obviously more training on our Monday nights. And some of the deals we've been doing, partnering with some other companies. This one right here you see on the screen is with a partnership that I wrote up with Kidder Matthews. So again, you're looking at a contract that's filled out appropriately. You can certainly see how important it is to fill in things completely. Draw your attention to term 4, which is the purchase price. Notice that even in Kidder Matthews or even in commercial purchase and sale agreements, anytime you cross off something in the purchase and sale agreement, it requires an initial by both parties in order for it to be effective. So drawing yourself to that section. Also in the earnest money, I think a lot of you guys asked me, what is common in commercial? Is it the same as residential? And actually with commercial, I verified this with Kidder Matthews, and they are all seeing wires, electronic transfers. They're not seeing checks. They're seeing, due to COVID, all wires coming through. And that also conveys to the seller or to the listing agent that the money is in a local bank account and is liquid. So definitely want to consider that when you're filling out your commercial purchase and sale agreements. Also want to make sure that you understand if there is personal property that in number 1, it says, if there's anything connected, it says in section 25, none if not completed. What I like about the new purchase and sale agreement they did at SIBA is they kept it really like a 2-3 page where you fill in the first couple pages. The rest of the purchase and sale agreement has instructions that if not filled in, the default would apply. So really, we can spend a bulk of our time just going through the first page or 2 of the contract, and you'll have a good handle of how to do it. If you go to, Shannon, if you can go to the next slide, we actually have a purchase and sale agreement checklist for commercial. This is for purchases. If you are doing commercial leasing, it does require a separate paperwork, and there is a commercial leasing checklist as well. It's not very much. You need a letter of intent and then really the copy of the commercial lease and any kind of commission instructions, but that's really it for the commercial leasing. So it's not very, not like it's like commercial purchase and sale agreement where you need a lot more. So tonight we'll just kind of go over real quickly the commercial purchase and sale checklist. If you are working on a commercial purchase and sale, these are the things that Jerry Kay and I will ask you for. If maybe you got us a purchase and sale agreement, but you didn't get us the proof of funds or the financing addendum or the FERPTA or the earnest money, if you're using a promissory note, we need to have that copy of that particular form. And certainly just like residential, you will need a legal description. We don't want you typing that in. It sometimes is, you almost want to when you're working on a SIBA, but they are really driving their brokers to use the legal that's provided from the title company. So be sure you A, B, C, D, E, and F, that you have that little checklist. That's what we ask for when we're reviewing. And then number 2, it talks about Form 17 commercial. There's three different Form 17 types. There's Form 17 for improved property, Form 17 for unimproved property, and then you have Form 17 for commercial. With commercial, a clue for all of you is that if the listing agent hasn't provided that in the supplementary, or maybe given it to you before you put your offer in, there's less likelihood that you'll be given a Form 17C. And if you are not given that Form 17C, unlike residential, it says that you automatically waive, that your buyer is waiving the Form 17 right. So really do a good job at asking questions with that listing agent or that seller to understand whether they have a Form 17C available or not. That is something we want. If we can get it, we ask for it, but if we get to mutual and beyond, unfortunately, we're just making a note in the file and moving right along. So if you're representing the buyer, certainly ask for that, but many commercial sellers won't provide it, or they'll provide very little and then they expect you to waive it. Earnest money deposit receipt from escrow, just like residential, we require that as well. We want to have proof. In fact, we were just audited just a couple weeks ago with the Department of Licensing. In fact, they hired a lot of auditors, so you may want to draw your attention to some of the reviews that Jerry Kay has sent you or that I've sent you in regards to your purchase and sale agreements. We may be asking you for more information about earnest money deposit because the Department of Licensing is auditing us. It's like they're out in full steam ahead because of working from home, and they've kind of figured out how to do audits from their home offices, which means we are being asked for more clarity in terms of earnest money deposit receipts, or why is the earnest money late? So if you get an email from Jerry Kay or from me in regards to that, don't take offense. We certainly are trying to be compliant with the state of Washington. We also allow you to do your own Form 40 commission disbursements with with escrow. So you're welcome to do that on your own. If you'd like me to sign off on your commission disbursement because you may be offering some sort of credit or contribution, certainly I'd be happy to authorize that and be the signer on the Form 40. Some of you have taken me up on that, and it works really well, especially when you get into a negotiation type of situation. Title report, we do want the ALTA statement. We want to see a copy of that, or even commercial. We realize that with the title reports with commercial, there is a difference between title for commercial versus residential. It takes more time. So don't be really aggressive with your title or escrow companies when it comes to commercial. I think, you can expect 7 to 15 days sometimes just to get the commercial title report preliminary done. So give yourself some time if you're working on a project. You may want to get a hold of your title company. Many of the large companies, First American, Chicago, Stewart, Fidelity, and so forth, also do residential as well as commercial. Make sure that you're talking with the commercial division of that company. Sometimes you get set up in the property profile and you're in the residential department when you really need to be in the commercial department. So realize that that is a difference between residential and commercial, just from the terms of the title report and what you need to gather, and give yourself more time. We also want to see, obviously, proper disclosure. Law of agency disclosure is still required. Lead-based paint prior to 1978 is still required. Any type of mold and moisture, that also is required for proper disclosure delivery. And that number 6 is still very, very relevant, even with commercial. If you are representing the seller and the buyer in a commercial purchase and sale agreement, you really need to have a buyer agency agreement. In fact, it's probably more important in commercial than it is in residential, because what happens with commercial oftentimes is we see a slew of off-market transactions that take place. So if you're wanting to represent a seller and a buyer, and you want to have that agreement that you're going to get paid for representing that buyer and getting them in touch with some off-market opportunities, we do have a buyer agency agreement that does work very well for commercial as well as residential. So if it's dual agency, be sure you have a buyer agency agreement. Some of the common drafting errors that we see is the parties improperly identified, basically the entity versus the individual. When you are working with a commercial client, what you might want to do is get a copy of how they like to sign it. If you have not worked with this entity before, you might want to get, kind of a snapshot of their their company, their LLC. You can certainly go online and you can go to the Department of Licensing, Department of Revenue, and you can certainly see how they're formed, who is the signer, when it was formed. Get that information ahead of your appointment with that commercial client. And it makes you look so much more well advised. And that way, you know how the signer, how their name is spelled, how their agreement, is it LLC? Is it an S Corp? Is it a C Corp? What kind of, how was it formed, and what does that formation look like? That way you can properly identify when you type up the contract, who is this person? Is it an individual or is it an entity? And you know how to spell it correctly. Not spelling out the price alphabetically is a huge mistake, especially when you're dealing with $1 million, $2 million, $5 million sales. Make sure that your price is alphabetically and numerically spelled out. An example is listed right there. Some of our newer brokers, they only put the numbers, and that's not good enough sometimes when you're dealing with commercial. You want to make sure it's spelled out as well as numerically and alphabetically. Legal description, handwritten. Some of my older brokers, in terms of tenure, still copy and paste. That's a total no-no. We want to see the legal description actually listed from the title company, and you can reference it just like you do with residential in that section where it says legal description, say see Exhibit A, and make sure the buyer and seller initial on the legal description provided by the title company. All the terms really should be checkbox. Make sure all those boxes are checked. I'll show you an example in a minute here. And timelines not adhered to in the properly. So for example, if you don't understand the difference between the residential timelines versus the commercial, there is some very big differences when it comes to computation of time in terms of residential versus commercial. So don't be thinking you know everything when you're doing your commercial. Make sure you go to the timelines, or you go to your terms, computation of time, or even just how you can conduct a counteroffer, and make sure you remember how that's done. It is different. Sometimes it's midnight, sometimes it's 9 p.m. It's not the same between residential and commercial. So watch your timelines on that. Feasibility, for example, as is provisions are abused. We see a lot of that using a Form 34 or kind of an addendum for commercial. We see a lot of language, and I hope to goodness that it's been vetted by an attorney, or you're being instructed by the buyer on how that needs to be crafted. Because if you just write language like buyer is buying this commercial property with as is, that's not proper clear contract language that should be used in a commercial purchase and sale. I'd rather have you come to me and ask me for some earnest money non-refundable clause. We're seeing commercial agents making that mistake as well. So any type of as is special language you want to write into a blank addendum, you've got to remember to counsel with your buyer, let them know that you can only use language that's provided to you by them or by their attorney, or they should seek legal counsel. And you certainly can come talk to me if there's some standardized things you're looking to put in place. Sellers to disclose everything, really buyers to assume the worst. You really want to make sure, if you're representing the buyer, that the seller is going to disclose as much as they know. Usually at the onset, it's very rarely that the seller is going to come back and give you some more information. So if you're representing a buyer, make sure you're asking enough questions. Assume the worst with everything with sellers. Earnest money, we like to see 2 to 5%. So if you're being asked like how much earnest money should I put up for a commercial property, it's about 2 to 5%. Try to avoid the promissory note. Use the earnest money wire as your means of delivering, and deliver it right to the closing agent. Be careful with environmental indemnities. Timelines for indemnities for environmental could take, I'm seeing over 12 months right now. Just due to the lack of contractors and people that can do those environmental studies, it is taking several months. Commercial, if you didn't know this, takes a lot longer than residential from start to finish. So we see listings in commercial 700 days, 500 days. You're going to see one today that is, I think, over 250 days. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad listing or that it's overpriced. Commercial properties generally take several months. So if you are going to take a listing and it's a commercial listing, I would recommend at least giving yourself 6 to 12 months just to come to, to have that term. So you have enough runway to find a buyer for that particular property. Non-refundable earnest money clauses are on the rise when it comes to commercial, but you must use the attorney-approved language that Best Choice Realty provides for that. Let's go right into the commercial. I'm going to show, actually, Shannon, if you could just show an example, go to SIBA. And I want to show you guys, there is more information that can be gleaned from SIBA. You are welcome to come into any of our offices and utilize, get some help from me using my SIBA account so that we can do some research together, figure out if this is something you want to have readily available for you at your home office. If you do, there is a minimum 6-month commitment. Monthly rate, I believe, Shannon, is $60 currently for your own SIBA account. But as you can see, you're going to have access to all of the forms. If you're going to do more than just one transaction in a year, it might make sense to go ahead and get your own SIBA account. Or if you're going to do your own SIBA listing, you may want to have your own SIBA account because you can then add all kinds of information into your listing. If you are using my account, certainly I get all the phone calls and emails and all of that, and I would pass those on to you certainly, but you certainly might want to consider having your own account. If you're doing a nice commercial listing, it definitely helps to have your own account. You will have, if you had your own SIBA account, you would have access to the legal forms library. If you click on that, Shannon, we'll show them what I mean by that. You can see the legal list of contracts is much like kind of the list like we have on the NWMLS. If you click on that, it has access to all of the contracts that you may need. So we have Washington and Idaho contracts that are on SIBA. And what's nice is you've got your own listing forms. It has the SIBA kind of form, so it definitely shows credentials and membership, which I think is very valuable when you're going out on a listing appointment. That would be another advantage of having your own SIBA account, is having access to all of the Form 17s, a law of agency, disclosures, and all branded with the SIBA logo. If you scroll on down to PS, I think somebody asked about a letter of intent. I believe there is a letter of intent. There is like 6 down. Go ahead and pull that one up, Shan, so you can see. There's a Commercial Brokers Association letter of intent that you have available to you. If you need a copy of this, for your use, you certainly can reach out to me and I can certainly provide you with a letter of intent that you could fill out, or you could upload. If you upload it into Matrix, it's sometimes trickier because you have to do a lot of dragging and dropping into that. That's another advantage of having your own SIBA account, is you have the ability to go ahead and fill everything in so it's typed and it looks very, very clean and professional. So this way right here, you can fill in the feasibility. If you're going to be doing a commercial lease or a commercial purchase and sale agreement, and you want to kind of get the dialogue started between you and that other client or the other broker, we represent the buyer. You definitely want to have a buyer agency agreement. You want to have given the law of agency pamphlet and all of the disclosures that are required for representation. But here's where you put in the purchase price, the earnest money amount, how it's going to be done. Certainly you want to check the wire. And then you want to select on the contingencies, whether what's the timeline for the feasibility and whether they're going to be cash or financed. Feasibility, unlike residential, it's basically gives your buyer time to get information about what that property is all about. How is the cash flow? Are there leases on it? Information that like soil tests or samples that were taken by maybe another owner. You certainly want to consider that as you're going through your commercial file. So Shannon's going to go ahead and show you. We've got about 9 minutes to create this real quickly. You go right just to transaction desk. All of them are uploaded. We got the MLS number. This is a commercial listing that we have on SIBA as well on NWMLS. Just so you know, NWMLS does not showcase all of the commercial properties. SIBA does a much better job of showcasing more. As you can see right here, we're just using the forms that have been uploaded. It's kind of like a brother-sister company between SIBA and the NWMLS. They don't have commercial leasing. I think somebody asked that question early on, but it definitely has, there we go. We got commercial leasing. It's already in the system. So it's pulling the commercial forms that we set up. So you can go right into go to form, Shannon. There we go. And we can go in and actually fill in the new commercial purchase and sale agreement. So much like you saw in SIBA, you can certainly do this right on Transaction Desk. Again, if you're only doing a purchase and sale agreement, again, if you have a lease, you're going to have to probably get a copy of the letter of intent and go about it that way, and then use the commercial leasing forms that we have on SIBA. Offer expiration date, give yourself some time. Most businesses don't work on Saturday and Sunday in SIBA land. So you might want to go ahead and give yourself a few days, if not a week, for the offer expiration date. That is quite common to see. Included personal property, I always put if on and used in conjunction. I check that box. The buyers, we're going to use, you can make it up, Shannon, and we're going to say that they are JKL Investments, is their LLC. And then we could put N, it says a limited liability company, goes right below there. Okay, and then it's purchase price. It's going to spell it all out for you. We're going to go 500,000. See how it does that automatically, makes it very nice. And then we're going to do financed offer. There we go. And that would be a SIBA form, not a 22A. It's a SIBA form, PS-FIN. Earnest money, we're going to go about 2%. So we're going to go, let's go 10,500. Closing agent always holds. We do not hold. Please do not check the box selling firm. We're going to go with the wire. Earnest money, just like residential, we want to give ourselves some time. So I would say on this one, I always do it upon removal of the feasibility. So check the other box, Shannon. There we go. And I would say 10 days after removal of the feasibility contingency. I'm going to move my screen around here. Okay, perfect. Feasibility contingency, 30 days sometimes is adequate. Otherwise, you need to negotiate that. On this particular property, there's not much to it. It's vacant, pretty easy to get into on this one that we're writing up here. But you want to maybe give yourself some time for the parties to go out and do an inspection, or to go and actually make sure the financials check out. Closing date, you could do 3 days after, 10 days after. I would say 10 days. You could do it right after. I mean, feasibility takes some time and money. So sometimes you can negotiate feasibility, earnest money deposit, and obviously the purchase price. There's certain levers that you'd want to pull depending on how you want to negotiate your commercial purchase and sale agreement. So sometimes sellers are like, I want skin in the game. I want earnest money deposit. We're looking for the highest net. We're looking for the least amount on the contingencies. They're going to give you some clues, and you want to know what you can certainly adjust. But you start out with something that's obviously for the buyer, and then they might come back and counter you. You get more negotiation with commercial than you do with residential. So you can certainly ask for this, but they'll most likely come back and counter you. Certainly closing date would be better. You know, if you can actually get a closing date. If I was a seller or listing agent, I would want to come back and counter them and change it to, like, say 30 days out, actually put a date in there. I don't want the last day of the month. So let's go July, maybe July 6th after the, yeah, there we go. Middle of the month would be good. Chicago, make sure you fill out the entire thing. Chicago title, Chicago escrow. That's who they've opened up title with. Statutory warranty deed is what we want. Bargain and sale deed we would use usually with an estate sale. Something like that would be a bargain and sale deed, but most of these types of sales would be statutory. Possession on closing, it's vacant. If there's something other, we would need to state that or refer to a rental agreement. Seller, don't check the box unless you've seen the FERPTA. So I would say that still remains true when you're dealing with commercial versus residential. And then buyer's default, always forfeiture of earnest money. And then the seller's default, recover earnest money or specific performance, or buyer election of remedies. You could certainly ask for that one. They might come back and counter you. Unpaid utilities do not waive. That's what I would recommend if we're representing a buyer. And then we represent the buyer, seller is represented by there we go. And then the earnest money promissory note, we can use that. And then we want to go ahead and use the FERPTA and the utility. So unlike residential, you actually have a FERPTA certification that's part of the contract. And then we want to use the financing addendum, Shannon, perfect. And this is built prior to 78, so I believe we need the lead-based paint disclosure, perfect. And there's no tenant estoppel, meaning there's no tenants that are on the property currently, so we don't need to do a tenant estoppel certificate or a vacant land addendum. We don't need to use those addenda. So you kind of look at this kind of checklist and decide what do I need? And that might need, if you're first time writing up a commercial purchase and sale agreement, certainly call me or call Jerry Kay so that we can make sure you have the appropriate addenda. It's the worst thing when you can send a commercial listing agent and you don't have all of the right forms. That makes it very, very difficult to counter you. But this autofills all of the information here. So you may want to put the buyer's address, get all of that information collected because you want to look professional and have everything filled in correctly. If you don't, then they have to gather that information from you in the counteroffer process. And we certainly want to have all of that filled in. So you're going to take the moment of time and fill everything in appropriately. There we go, Shannon. That's great. Scroll on down. And as you can see, the commercial, as you save it, it will save in transaction desk, just like you do purchase and sale agreements. The financing addendum allows for either new financing, where you're getting a loan for the place, or it allows for owner assumption or owner finance. So this is where you need some assistance, maybe in working with your buyer and knowing how you want to fill this in. So this is a class all in itself. Certainly with new financing on this particular one, we're going to go with number 1, check the box. We're going to put in, usually commercial is about 25% down, commercial investments. So we're going to do 30% down, not to exceed a current rate. I'm going to say 5% annual. And we're going to do a term of, you could do 30 years, 15 years, 10 years, depends on how they're structuring it with your lender. Better to ask the question of who's doing the pre-approval certificate or who's working with your buyer than just to guess. It's better to ask questions. Amortized over 30 years, we could do it that way. Amortized over 15 years, 10 years, we wouldn't know unless we talk with the lender. And the points, not more than 1%. I would not want to pay more than 1% in points for the loan amount. So go ahead and put 15 years, Shannon, on that one. And then let's do 1% on that other line. And then that gives us a financing contingency of 30 days if not filled in. So that's where you would need, you do have to fill in that section for the financing, but that one, it is automatically filled in 30 days. So that gives you a financing contingency of 30. If your client is needing to assume box 2 doesn't get checked, leave it alone. You either are getting a loan or you're having the seller, you're assuming something, or the seller is financing. Look at number 3. Seller finance is, I think, on number 3. There you go. Payment schedule, payment terms. Again, you'll need to work closely with your buyer to understand what they're looking to do as far as seller finance. That's why it may be better to do, even on the purchase and sale agreement, might be better to do a letter of intent. Make sure you have a buyer agency agreement, though, before you put a letter of intent in place. And then that way you're not going back and forth and countering on a purchase and sale agreement. That letter of intent can have some sort of terms on what the buyer is kind of thinking as far as terms for seller finance. And instead of negotiating on the purchase and sale agreement, you can negotiate on a simple 2-page letter of intent letter. So that's all of the information. Estoppels are discussed in number 4. In terms of how that's done, and any additional provisions would be listed in term 5. Notice there's a big, huge area, and be very careful what you type in here, because when you do, you're practicing law. So make sure that you've spoken with me or with Jerry Kay or with your buyer's attorney before you start typing stuff into this big, long section. So that pretty much sums up the basics. I want to show a couple things real quick on SIBA, Shannon, if you could, because a lot of you are asking me questions when you come into the office, and I don't have I might be in an appointment or not helping you, and I want you to know you do have access to information. So you can go in and research listings. Go up there. We're going to just do a quick search, and we're going to do a search data and listings. Sure, that sounds good. And there's on the left-hand side is how you filter. Always before you start this, click on the reset because it saves whatever you were working on before. So click reset. That's a huge clue. Some of you go, I'm not finding anything. Well, commercial is pretty depleted like residential right now, but certainly there usually is some hits that you'll get when you use SIBA. So we're going to look for anything for lease, for sale, and we're going to do the asset class, leave everything checked. We want everything there. And I want to just see the market area. So we're going to go into market area and we're going to select the Kitsap Peninsula. So Kitsap County, there you go. See how the map zooms in for you? And it will tell you, it's searching right now, it has 12,908 active. So it's exceeding the 200. We need to refine it. So that's where I might go ahead and eliminate the for lease. There we go. Now these are my purchase and sale. I have 156 properties, which is really depleted right now out there in the Kitsap Peninsula. So I can isolate that by asset class. I can check the box, Shannon, and let's just look for office space, or I can select which cities I want to specifically look at. When you are in commercial, you may want to go broad and then narrow it down and maybe isolate it by the asset class. Many of you ask questions like, I want to partner with somebody. And then my question to you is, well, there's a specialty. Most of the people that do commercial only have a specialty either in multifamily or in office space, or if they have specialty in mixed use. Then on the right-hand side, you'll see all of the results, and you can zoom in and you can kind of hover over the X or the R, and that will give you more information about that particular listing. So unlike the NWMLS, it's kind of, you're not used to it. It's a little bit harder to get used to, but if you click on, so for example, Pier 1, Silverdale, yep, click on it. This is a $3,150,000 piece right here. It's available. It has the commission amount located. So that's another reason why you may want SIBA, so you can see what the commission rate would be, so you can negotiate it properly on the purchase and sale agreement. Gives you all the agent's information. You're able to email this off to your client. There's maps and there's market information, marketing flyer, SIBA flyer, a lot more information that you can sometimes gather from SIBA than you can gather from the NWMLS. So certainly a place that you want to check if you're working with a commercial client. Notice they have a lot of details about a marketing flyer. Some of these things take a long time to create. Lori, our graphic designer, has created some templated type flyer information for SIBA. If you have a listing that you're wanting to kind of really class it up and really, you might want to spend some time and money and having it done, with our logo, with our brand. Provide her with the content that you want on these particular SIBA flyers, and she can design something very, very quickly and easily for you, but you would be paying per her hourly rate. So certainly something to keep in mind. It sets yourself apart. You definitely want that professional image. And it's not difficult to do. It just takes time. And you would need to create the content of what you want on the flyer. She then can make it pretty for you. And then that way you'd have a 9-10 page document that you could use. As far as the SIBA flyer, that's just taking the information just like the MLS does and puts it into a nice, easy PDF for you to send off. Sale history, lease history, all of this information is available to you when you look things up on SIBA. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. I know it was quick and fast, but I definitely want to answer any questions. If you have questions, go ahead and shoot me a chat or a message. Shannon, is there anything that came in to your text?
No, but I think this is a great opportunity. I know that some people have unique properties that they're working on right now. I mean, go ahead and unmute your line if you want to get your questions answered, or just go through the chat. We'll be on for, I think, the next couple minutes just to get everybody's questions answered.
Hey, Rochelle, I had a quick question for you.
Sure.
So on the LOI for a single tenant and a multi-tenant, is that going to be, let's say you have an office building and there's multiple tenants in there, and then use the multiple multi-tenant one, or
Yes.
or if it's just single standing building, use a single tenant?
Yes, and there's also a choice you have between, if it's leasing, right? You have a triple net sometimes, or you have, you know,
Yeah.
so that's something unique too that you need to kind of get yourself well versed in, is what are they typically working on there and
Like
with that
base,
landlord.
the base rent versus the operating cost and whatnot.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We can help you with that too, TJ. So no worries. If you're asking for some questions, we can certainly be another set of eyes for you. Make sure you're looking at things correctly.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
You bet. Okay, any other questions? Jerry Kay, anything that I missed?
Also, do you recommend that we get a LLC? Because if something happens, we could get sued.
If you are buying your own commercial property?
Or helping a buyer?
No, we have errors and emissions insurance that covers commercial. It's a great question. Our E&O policy covers commercial business opportunities, commercial purchase and sale agreements, and commercial leasing. And it's the same low rate that we offer all of our brokers that do residential as well. So no, I don't think it's necessary. If you are a party to the transaction and you're like buying a commercial investment, it may be smart to do that, but it may not. I mean, my husband and I, we own the property in Sumner, and we bought it just together as a couple for tax reasons. Our CPA advised us to do it that way rather than do it through our LLC or our S Corp. So really want to consult with your attorney or with your CPA in terms of whether you want to, take the title as a formation, as an entity, or as an individual. But that's really up to you, Jan. That's not something, as a real estate agent, we don't need to do that because we have E&O and the insurance does protect us.
Oh, okay, great. Good thing.
We had another great question that came through, and this one comes up a lot. So I'm glad that Diane brought it to the table. Is, should I list my property on SIBA for a multifamily property? And similar questions we get all the time is, should I list it on the MLS? Should I list it on SIBA? Which one do I do it on? I'll let you answer that, Rochelle.
Well, if it's greater than a fourplex, then yes, let's put it on SIBA. I think you'll get more eyeballs on that. If it's just a duplex, just residential is fine, but multifamily, more than 4 units, definitely put it on SIBA. And do both. So you have the ability, any of you have the ability to use the SIBA. You just need to come into the office and data entry. I'm not going to spend the time data entering. I think it took me, how long did it take me, Shannon, to data entry?
Way too long.
Way too long.
It's tough for anybody else to do the listing input for you because there's so many nuances with commercial properties, in terms of what there is, what's included, what the rents are. I mean, there's no way that we could know that for you.
So you're welcome to come into the office and use it, but I would put it on both. I would put it on NWMLS and SIBA. People have asked me, should I put it on LoopNet? There's a cost for doing that on LoopNet, and I think the prices have gone up. LoopNet is kind of like the Zillow of the commercial world, so it's up to you. I mean, sometimes you'll see stuff on LoopNet and you're like, that's old, that's not something that, but certainly you have more eyeballs by putting on LoopNet as well as SIBA as well as the MLS as well. So you do have the rights to do that on the NWMLS, to put even commercial, industrial, or multifamily, or grocery, or gas stations. There's just not very much you're going to find on NWMLS. Most of those properties that get listed go listed, and they go listed on SIBA. I think it's about 80% is what I've seen on SIBA.
And then Diane, did you have another question?
Oh, so the multifamily I was talking about has 1 commercial unit.
Oh, good. So it's got
So
kind of a.
Would that be a SIBA or a Northwest MLS?
You could do both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is it, my question would be, is it for lease or for sale?
For sale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, then
you
yeah.
can put it for both.
For commissions, I don't know how that really works with commercial. I mean, I know everything's negotiable, obviously, but what's the standard, I guess, you're
Not
mentioning?
a standard. It's all negotiable. You're going to see.
You know what I mean? I just don't want to lowball myself or undercut my own self while I'm trying to negotiate,
Sure.
everything for it. So
You saw the one that I showed on the screen, and that was a 2% offering for a buyer's agent commission, right? For that, for $2.5 million. So much like residential, it's the same kind of thing, TJ. It's based on work, how much, negotiation is going to need to be done, how much, how many times you have to go show up at the property. Most of these commercial sales, they require the listing agent to go there, handshake, meet the other buyer's agent, the buyer, so there's much more involvement. So again, you need to kind of discuss that with, you certainly can talk to me one-on-one on a particular project. That's what's, I think a lot of you don't understand, or some of the people on social media, they're talking amongst themselves, and those are some violations. But as far as the brokerage and you making a decision on how you want to charge for your services, that can be a discussion we have, one-off. So we can certainly talk about that, TJ, but I would consider it just kind of running through just like residential. Okay. How do you charge? I think commercial leasing would be a little bit different, right? Because usually it's based on first and last month's rent, something like that. And it's sometimes is a flat rate. It depends on obviously the size of the project or what's involved. So it's really not, there's not really a good set answer I can give you, unfortunately, for that.
What I'm seeing in my current lease one is like it's per square foot. So like $1 a foot times, however many years. And so I just want to see if, I don't know, I'm just trying to navigate these waters, commercial waters. So I want to make sure that I'm not, again, underballing.
Right before, have they signed the contract yet? Not with you?
What's that?
Have they signed? Is it listing potentially? Or
no,
is
I'm assisting a tenant.
Okay.
For a commercial lease, and
so then that's already been determined based on whatever they've determined. So I'm just saying if I want to go do some farming on commercial office spaces or something, and help lease those out of, how we can have. How is it done? It's based on a percentage. You're right. So it's kind of done up usually first and last month's rent, or based on the square footage.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Shannon, anything else?
No, I think that's it. That was a great call.
Okay. Hopefully that was helpful, and thanks for joining. We'll catch you next Monday. Have a great week, you guys.